A billionaire came home early and froze.
Be quiet.
His wife was in bed with another.
A billionaire came home early and froze. His wife was in bed with another man. But before he could scream, the maid whispered just 2 words, "Be quiet." What happened next didn't just save his marriage. It saved his life. Before this story unfolds, subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that silence, when used wisely, can change everything. Anderson's private jet landed hours earlier than planned. For the first time in years, the billionaire wanted something money couldn't buy. A simple surprise. No assistance, no security entourage, just him and the thought of his wife's smile when she saw him standing at the door. The mansion gates opened silently as his car rolled in. Too silently. Usually, the house breathed with life. Soft music, distant footsteps, laughter drifting from the halls. Tonight it felt hollow, still, unnatural. Anderson stepped inside, loosening his tie, calling her name softly. No answer. He climbed the stairs, every step echoing louder than it should have. That's when he heard it. A man's laugh. Not from the living room, not from the guest wing, from his bedroom. His hand froze on the railing. His heart pounded as if trying to warn him to turn back. This isn't real, he told himself. There had to be an explanation. A friend. A misunderstanding. Anything. But the closer he moved, the clearer the sound became. Low, relaxed, comfortable. The kind of laugh that belonged to someone who felt at home. Anderson pushed the bedroom door open just enough to see shadows moving inside. In that moment, the dreams he carried across ocean shattered. Shock tightened his chest. Disbelief blurred his vision. And betrayal burned deeper than any loss he'd ever faced. The truth was surfacing, and it was far more painful than he was prepared to face. The door creaked as Anderson pushed it open just a fraction more. Inside, his wife's voice floated through the room. Soft, playful, unfamiliar. A man replied, close enough that Anderson didn't need to see him to know where he stood. The world tilted. But before Anderson could step forward, a hand touched his arm. Gentle, firm, certain. "Sir," a whisper breathed beside him, barely louder than the sound of his own heartbeat. "Please be quiet." Anderson turned sharply. It was Amara, the maid. She stood there in her plain uniform, eyes wide, not with surprise, but with something far heavier. Fear mixed with resolve, the kind that comes from knowing too much for too long. "What are you doing here?" Anderson whispered, his voice trembling despite years of boardroom battles and billion-dollar negotiations. Amara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she slowly shook her head, her gaze flicking toward the bedroom door. "This isn't the first time," she said quietly. Her words landed harder than the laughter had. Anderson's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Amara swallowed. "I clean this floor every morning. I change the sheets. I hear footsteps when no one is supposed to be home." She paused, choosing each word carefully. "There have been visits. Always when you're away. Always late. Always secret." The hallway felt suddenly too small. Too close. Anderson looked back at the door. The silhouettes inside moved again. Carefree. Unafraid. "How long?" he asked. Amara lowered her eyes. "Months. Months." The man who controlled global empires felt something inside him crack. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, quietly. The most dangerous kind of break. He took a step forward. Amara grabbed his sleeve. "Please," she whispered, urgency sharp in her voice now. "If you confront them, you'll lose more than your marriage." Anderson froze. "What are you talking about?" Amara reached into her apron with trembling hands and pulled out her phone. The screen was already recording, audio only. "I didn't do this to spy," she said quickly. "I did it because I was scared." "Scared of what?" Anderson asked. "Of what they were planning," she replied. The laughter inside the room stopped. A bed creaked. Voices lowered. Amara pressed the phone closer to Anderson. He listened. The man's voice wasn't just familiar. It was calculated. Smooth. Confident. "They have no idea," the man said. "Once the signatures are done, half of it moves offshore. By the time Anderson realizes, it'll be too late." Anderson's blood ran cold. His wife laughed softly. "He trusts me. He always has. The words sliced deeper than any betrayal of the heart. This wasn't just an affair. This was a plan. Amara stopped the recording. Her hands were shaking now. I've heard things like this before, she said. Documents being moved. Lawyers coming late at night. Meetings you don't know about. Anderson leaned against the wall, the weight of realization pressing down on him. Every unexplained delay. Every sudden decision. Every moment he'd brushed off as stress or distance. They're not just cheating on you, sir, Amara said, her voice barely steady. They're preparing to take everything. The mansion, the one he built brick by brick in his mind before it ever stood in stone, felt suddenly hostile, like it no longer belonged to him. Why didn't you tell me? He asked quietly. Amara hesitated. I tried once, she admitted. Months ago. Your wife warned me. Warned you how? She said if I spoke a word, she'd make sure I never worked again. That my family back home would suffer. Amara's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. I believed her. Anderson clenched his fists. For the first time since opening that door, anger surfaced, but not wild, not reckless. Focused, controlled. What do we do? He asked. Amara met his gaze, something fierce awakening in her eyes. We stay silent, she said. We watch. We record. Every word. Every move. She glanced toward the bedroom again. They think you're a man blinded by love and distance. A pause. Let them keep thinking that. Anderson straightened. In the glass of a nearby mirror, he barely recognized himself. Not the shocked husband from minutes ago, but a man waking up from a long illusion. Thank you, he said, meaning far more than the words carried. Amara nodded once. I didn't protect the house before, she said softly. But I will now. Footsteps moved inside the room. Anderson stepped back into the shadows, heart pounding, not with heartbreak alone, but with clarity. The betrayal ran deeper than cheating, deeper than broken vows. And in the silence of that hallway, an alliance was formed. Between a billionaire who had lost his trust and a maid who had seen everything and was no longer afraid to speak. For the first time in his life, Anderson learned how to live two realities at once. By day, he was the same attentive husband, sending flowers, checking in for meetings, listening with practiced warmth as Bonita spoke about charity events and quiet dinners. He smiled. He nodded. He played the role she believed he would always play. By night, he became a shadow in his own home. From the hallway, from behind half-closed doors, from the silent corners Amara had learned to move through unseen, the truth revealed itself piece by piece. Bonita had grown careless. So had her lover. They no longer whispered like criminals afraid of being caught. They spoke like victors dividing spoils. He'll never see it coming, the man said one evening, his voice dripping with confidence. Men like Anderson think money protects them. It makes them soft. Bonita laughed, swirling a glass of wine. Soft is exactly what we'll use against him. Amara's phone recorded every word. They spoke of lawyers already paid, doctors willing to write reports, old staff members they planned to bribe or threaten, false abuse accusations, emotional cruelty, psychological harm, fabricated bruises that would appear at the perfect moment. All I need is to cry at the right time, Bonita said casually. The court will believe me. They always do. Anderson stood on the other side of the wall, his jaw locked so tightly it ached. Half of his wealth, she planned to take. Companies he'd built from nothing. Foundations created to save lives. Assets moved overseas under false names. Accounts emptied quietly while he slept beside her. And when he's distracted, the lover asked. Bonita smiled. We'll push him to react. One angry moment. One raised voice. That's all we need. The room filled with laughter. Anderson felt anger surge, hot, violent, demanding release. But he didn't move. He didn't speak. He remembered Amara's words. Let them think you're blind. So he became patient, painfully patient. He kissed Bonita's forehead before bed, apologized when she provoked him, allowed arguments to end with him walking away, shoulders lowered, pride swallowed. Each time she tested him, hoping to provoke rage, she grew more confident when he didn't. He's breaking, she told her lover. I can feel it. She was wrong. What was breaking was the illusion that had protected her. Weeks passed. More recordings. Emails forwarded. Documents photographed. Amara found contracts hidden behind false folders. Legal drafts saved under harmless names. Transfer schedules planned to the minute. Every betrayal was logged. Every lie time-stamped. Anderson began to understand something terrifying and powerful. The more patient he became, the more reckless they grew. They spoke openly now, in the kitchen, in the bedroom, in the very spaces that once symbolized trust. "He won't fight back," Bonita said one night. "He's too afraid of losing me." Anderson listened, standing in darkness, his reflection staring back from the glass. No, he wasn't afraid of losing her. He was preparing to lose nothing at all. By the time Bonita and her lover finalized their plan, by the time they believed the billionaire was fully under their control, Anderson had already gathered enough truth to destroy every lie they intended to tell. Anger burned in his chest, but it was no longer wild. It was disciplined and guided by patience. The lie was released into the world on a Tuesday morning. By noon, it was everywhere. Headlines screamed words like abuse, control, violent billionaire. News panels replayed Bonita's tearful interview on a loop, her voice trembling, eyes red, sleeves carefully rolled down to hide what didn't exist. "I stayed silent for years," she said, her sob perfectly timed. "Because I loved him. Because I was afraid." The world believed her. They always did. Anderson watched from the living room as police lights washed blue and red across the walls of the mansion he had once called home. Officers moved with rehearsed seriousness, avoiding eye contact, already convinced. "Mr. Anderson," one of them said, cuffing his hands, "you're coming with us." He didn't resist. He didn't argue. He only glanced once, just once, toward the kitchen doorway. Amara stood there, still as stone. Their eyes met. Now her look said, "This is when patience matters most." The doors slammed shut. Cameras flashed. Neighbors whispered. Social media erupted with judgment from people who had never known his name before that day. Inside the holding cell, Anderson sat alone, the weight of injustice pressing down harder than the cold steel bench beneath him. Years of discipline told him to stay calm, but this was different. This was reputation, legacy, truth being buried alive. Yet even there, in that silence, he didn't break. Because behind the scenes, the recording never stopped. Amara moved through the mansion like a ghost. When Bonita laughed with her lover about how easy it had been, Amara recorded. When lawyers discussed timelines, Amara recorded. When a man bragged about the judge they believed they had handled, Amara recorded that too. "They actually arrested him," Bonita said, almost amused. "I told you it would work." Her lover smiled. "By the time he gets out, half his assets will already be frozen." Every word was saved. Every confession preserved. Anderson was released late that night on bail. Reporters swarmed him, shouting questions sharp as knives. "Did you hurt your wife? Is this about power? Do billionaires think they're above the law?" He said nothing. At home, he sat alone in the dark, scrolling through messages, some from friends who had vanished, others from strangers calling him a monster. His hands shook, not with fear, with restraint. Amara placed a folder gently on the table in front of him. "It's all here," she said quietly. "More than we expected." Anderson didn't open it right away. He stared at the wall, breathing slowly, grounding himself. "They think silence means guilt," he said. Amara shook her head. "Silence can also mean strategy." He finally opened the folder. Audio files, photos, time-stamped messages, signed drafts of lies yet to be told in court. Anderson closed it again, standing taller than he had in days. "They wanted me angry," he said. "They wanted me loud." He looked at Amara, eyes steady. "So I'll give them the opposite." Outside, the world had already chosen a side. Inside, the truth waited, patient, complete, and unstoppable. And Anderson began preparing his final move. The press conference was scheduled for 8 minutes. It lasted less than 3. And in that time, the world turned upside down. Anderson stepped onto the stage alone. No lawyers at his side, no prepared speech in his hands. The room buzzed with cameras, whispers, judgment still hanging thick in the air. "I won't speak long," he said calmly, "because today, the truth will speak for itself." He nodded once, and Amara walked forward. The quiet maid no one had noticed for years now stood beneath blinding lights, her hands steady, her voice clear. "My name is Amara," she said. "I worked in the Anderson household. I saw everything." A screen behind them lit up. Audio played. Bonita's laughter. Plans to fake bruises. Conversations about bribe lawyers. Jokes about how easily the world would believe her. Gasps filled the room. Then messages appeared. Time-stamped documents. Offshore transfer plans. Legal drafts prepared months before any accusation. Cheating. Fraud. Conspiracy. Each lie collapsed under its own weight. Bonita stood up from the crowd, screaming, denying, but it was over. Police moved in as her lover tried to slip out the back, only to be stopped, handcuffed, exposed. Cameras caught everything. Anderson said nothing more. He didn't need to. Truth had finally found its voice. That evening, charges were filed. Arrests were made. Apologies flooded in, from media outlets, from officials, from strangers who had once condemned him. Anderson stood outside the building as the sun set, the noise fading behind him. Amara joined him quietly. "You gave me my life back," he said. She shook her head. "No," she replied softly. "You trusted the truth long enough to let it win." For the first time in weeks, Anderson exhaled. Justice hadn't shouted. It had waited. And when it finally spoke, it spoke louder than any lie ever could. Anderson didn't win because he was rich. He won because he stayed calm when lies were loud. And the maid they ignored became the voice that saved him. Sometimes the smartest move is not to shout, but to listen, wait, and protect the truth. If this story moved you, like the video, subscribe to the channel. And remember, silence isn't weakness. When used wisely, it's power.